Mm. So they, so okay, they can see us. Hello, everybody.
There you go. All right, so we are now live to the world.
We are. You're live.
Yay! All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Maeve, and this is Craig Gravina.
Hi.
And we are streaming here from the Copper Crow in beautiful Albany, New York.
Yeah.
Craig, if you want to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, this is our presentation connecting craft beer and local history to engage your guests. And there's a specific reason we picked the Copper Crow in Albany.
Right. So the Copper Crow is, well, it's a new bar that's opening in the next few weeks, hopefully. And actually, Jason, do you want to come over and say hello real quick? We'll bring the owner of the new bar and restaurant in. Come on in and give a wave.
Yeah, so you can see your screen right there.
Hey guys. This is Jason Pierce. He's the owner of the Copper Crow, and the reason that we're here at the Copper Crow is because this building was built in the 1830s and originally as the Kirk Brewery in Albany. Albany was a rather large brewing center in the 19th century. And we thought it would be a great place if we're going to talk about how to engage with your products and your breweries and your tap rooms with history, to do it from a fairly historic place that has something to do with beer. So that's why we're here at the Copper Crow.
Yeah. So my role is I work at Discover Albany, which is the Albany County's tourism promotion agency and destination marketing organization. We'll get into what that means a little later, but I usually work with public programming and local cultural and heritage sites. And Craig, who are you?
I am the co-founder of the Albany Ale Project, and the Albany Ale Project is basically a research project looking into the pre-lager brewing history of Albany, New York, and the Upper Hudson Valley. I've actually expanded into a little bit more of just New York in general, but I'm also the co-author of Upper Hudson Valley Beer, which is a book about exactly what we were just talking about.
Now, Craig, if you'll skip ahead one slide, you can just see where we are streaming from. Let's see.
What's going on?
There we go.
There we go.
So this is the Copper Crow, and you can see a little bit of the interior, not just from the murals behind us, but some of their promotional materials as well.
Yep.
And I did forget to mention, though, you will see Craig and I, everyone here is vaccinated, which is why Craig and I are able to present, a little closer than 6 feet here. But now skipping to the next slide. So this is just kind of some quick vocabulary that we're going to talk about and some terminology. As I mentioned, we are the tourism promotion agency here in Albany. That's Discover Albany. That's the visitor center, which is what I operate out of. And the visitor center is part of an old water pumping station from like the 1850s, which is also connected to a local brewery, which we're going to be talking about, C.H. Evans Brewery. Now, Discover Albany, you probably know other DMOs, destination marketing organizations like I Love New York, right? So these are people who are trying to court visitors to come to our destinations, in my case, Albany County. And we want them not just to do like a drive-through. Really, we want to have enough stuff to promote that they would stay for a couple of days, possibly booking a hotel. Now you'll see hear us use this phrase, the cultural heritage tourism. And that's really a fancy way for people who come to Albany or come to any destination and they go to museums or historic sites. They really want to know the history of a destination and they want it to be authentic. So very likely you yourself are a cultural heritage tourist. And the other thing we've done some data is the cultural heritage tourist spends more than just an average person who's going to come through, maybe just stop at one place and leave. No. The people who want the authentic experience, they want to stay, they want to immerse themselves. And how they immerse themselves is food and drink. That's one of the number one questions I get at the visitor center. What's your local beer? What's your local brewery? The awesome thing about Albany County is we have enough, you can see the link there for our Capital Craft Beverage Trail. We have a passport. Some of your destinations may have that. So that's like an easy way for us to get that authentic experience of food and drink and great restaurants. That's why we work, I work so well with a lot of these great restaurants like the Copper Crow. But how do we get the history in? And that's where Craig and I connected. So if you go to the next slide, Craig. All right. So how do we start to connect the history events with craft beverage? And that's how Craig came to me one time, and we met at a local pub, of course, and he says, I want to tell beer history. And I was like, well, I want it to be tourism. I want to go into neighborhoods. I want to go walking. So that's how we connected. Here's where we do disconnect. A thing from my point of view, what I think is an easy way to get that history for our local brewers is finding something local and naming a beer after it. So what you see in his example here of the Moby Dick Book Club. This is the C.H. Evans Albany Pump Station Brewery. And I approached the brewer and I said, Sam, we have a group of people. We want to read Moby Dick in 6 months because across the street from your brewery, Herman Melville lived there when he was a boy. And he said, that sounds like fun. And he named a beer Melville's Wit. We then had the book club. We met monthly. We read 100 pages each month. We had about 20 people every month who would come to the brewery. We'd get food, we'd get drink. We would bring in local experts to talk about not only the book, but Melville's connection to Albany. And it actually even inspired an artist who you see there who did a mural, part of the Capitol Walls initiative in Albany, but he snuck in that white whale because he heard of this story. So it really brought this really fun summer event. We got press. So for me, as just a tourism person, I'm like, hey, just name a beer after something local. But then Craig wants to go a little deeper.
Yeah. So being a historian and being someone that deals with the brewing history of Albany,
Ooh, pop one slide.
Oops.
There we go.
One of the things that we like to do, because it's not just a matter of, like every brewery that you go to is going to have some beer that has some reference to history to it. And that's fine. I mean, if that's as far as you want to go, that's totally cool too. There's also recreating older beers and beer specific or history specific beers from your local area. We've done this a number of times with the pump station. I know that Sam Pagano is actually a member of Craft Beer Professionals, and that's him there stirring something in there. It's actually a 17th century beer that we did. And it was part of our Prost Program. Albany has a really heavy Dutch heritage, so we named the program Prost, which is essentially the Dutch version of Prost from Germany, cheers. And we actually made beers that were historically similar to those beers made in the 17th, 18th, 19th, and early 20th century. And then we went to local historic homes and museums, house museums, and put that beer into context. We explained if we went to an 18th century house, we explained what they would have been drinking, what kind of beer they would have been drinking around the Revolution and the post-Revolution period. We went to the Underground Railroad History Project's Myers home and talked about what kind of alcohol was being drank in the 1850s, and then had a sampling of that beer. One of the other things that we do is do neighborhood brewing tours, or neighborhood tours throughout the city to talk about where the breweries were. So these are some images from that.
And some of the criticism we actually got from that's our first year. We've been doing them for, I think, 3 years now, Craig. And originally we'd start at a pub and end at a pub, and our visitors were saying specifically like, no, we want a beer stop in the middle. They wanted to keep that story going. And that was the other thing with Prost. If you'll skip to the next slide. This is actually some feedback from the executive director of the Underground Railroad History Project. So this is a real home in Albany that was a stop on the Underground Railroad run by Stephen and Harriet Myers. Stephen was a free person of color, and he and Harriet, they were very, very active abolitionists. But they let us take over the whole backyard, and Craig found some recipes that would have been authentic to the area. And then we brought in the brewer, and we brought in also a distiller who was an expert. And we talked about, this is what maybe you would have a drink here. And again, it was that idea of the immersive experience.
And one of the important things to remember too is that we weren't just going there and talking about beer. We were going there to contextualize what people were drinking at this time. But that allows us to bring in all different kinds of history. We're going to the Underground Railroad History Project. We're talking about life in the 1850s and 1860s. And that allows us to talk about the Underground Railroad in a situation that you wouldn't necessarily think that you'd be talking about,
And both the brewers and the historic sites said it brought in new audiences and it brought in younger audiences.
Yeah.
But we have our first question here from John, and it's almost like he's reading the PowerPoint. How did you find recipes from centuries ago?
Oh.
So if you want to do this, how do you do it? So
right.
That is the next slide.
So that is, yes. So one of the ways to do it is, and as a historian and as a researcher, I have to work, hand in hand with museums and with local archives. So if you're looking to do that, you want to most likely contact the educational staff to develop programs. However, if you're looking to do research, then you'd want to contact the curatorial staff. And there's a difference between the two. The educational programs is very similar to what Maeve does, whereas the research and curatorial programs are more in line of what I would do. I do work for a museum. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of records for brewing that I have in access to my museum. So you have to go online, you have to look, you have to find stuff. But more importantly than that, you don't necessarily have to be recreating a beer to capitalize on the history. What you do need to do is make contacts with the people who know the history. You need to reach out to your local cultural institutions and museums and say, this is what I know. I know beer, you know history. Let's see if we can find some common ground in doing that.
How Prost actually came about is, we knew that we were good friends with the Albany Distilling Company. We have Craig, we had a local brewer, and we were like, all right, and we wanted to bring some kind of program to these sites. So we were sitting around the table and, some of our brewers would say, well, I'm not a historian. I don't know what I could bring. And I'm actually outside of the whole craft beverage industry altogether. And I was listening to Craig and the distiller and the brewers, and they were talking about ingredients. And the brewers were coming forward and they would talk about hops. Now, you all talk about hops like in your sleep, right? I don't. So when you talk about the smell of a hop or that this hop grows well here, but it doesn't grow well there, I interrupted the three of them and I said, well, wait a minute, why doesn't that one grow well here? And the brewer came out like the star saying, oh, because of the rainfall here, blah, blah, and just went on and on and on about the intricacy of a hop flower. I didn't even know they flowered. And he's Googling a picture and he's showing me. So the thing with the historian is, yes, the historian can maybe tell the story and talk about the culture, but it was the brewers who brought the element,
it's the immersiveness.
The immersiveness.
That's
yes.
really, and it helps with the engagement of whoever you want to come into your brewery. One of the best events that I did was 5 or 6 years ago, called the 1780 Beer Challenge. There was a minor Revolutionary War skirmish about 45 minutes west of Albany. In the town of Middleburg, and there's a brewery in Middleburg. And I reached out to them and said, I want to do something with you guys. Let's come up with a project. They were just opening. They were willing to pretty much do anything. The person who wrote the book with me happened to be Canadian. There was essentially in the American Revolution, there was a civil war that happened in New York, and it was fought by loyalists, and it was fought by the Albany County militia. The loyalists end up leaving, going to Canada. And we did a battle of beers. We had a Canadian brewery come down and bring some beer. Middleburg made a beer that was based on something that was in 1780. And we did a public tasting, public vote, and then we had some judges that did some judging for us. But more importantly than that, we had reenactors, and we had we had this woman that was cooking on an open fire. We were connected with the local library, so we went in and did a little talk in the local library. These events can be as big as you want them to be, or they can be just as simple as bringing in, your local municipal historian to talk local history over a pint.
And that actually is, I swear our friend John here is looking at our PowerPoint.
John, you're my favorite guy right now, just to let you know.
So the question is, do individual breweries promote the beers and tours, or does the Historical Society or Board of Tourism do it? The answer is across the board, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody does
Everybody should do it.
Yeah.
So in my case, so if you want to, so Craig, that list there, as we talked about, who do I contact if I want to get into this? For your museum, if it's a bigger museum, you're probably not going to do the executive director. If it's a small institution, that person may be wearing all the same hats. But generally, if you first look there, look for the Educator, public program. Craig described that pretty well.
They're really the gatekeepers. They're the ones that will talk to you and say, all right, that sounds like a cool program. Let me go find a curator that I think would probably match up with you. And then we'll run it by the director and see if we can do this. And then that's how you get the ball rolling.
So then you have that. And if we'll go to the next slide, right? Oh, no, apparently I didn't put a slide in there.
No.
That's okay. So then you want to, now in our case, in Albany, we have the Destination Marketing Organization, your DMO, or the TPA, the Tourism Promotion Agency. They kind of use both of those names interchangeably. It is not a particularly sexy phrase. So many of them will not lead with Albany DMO. So you could try to Google that, your local area, you can Google those acronyms, but also you'll notice I go by Discover Albany. So look for those, and you may be aware of them anyway, your, visit Maryland, visit Orlando, discover this. If you're a smaller like neighborhood or village, it could be your chamber. But the big thing is informing your partners. So, the brewer, use your social media, tag each other like crazy, but the museum should be doing their part as well. And then taking that extra step though, and letting your chamber, your TPA or somebody else know. And one thing that Craig and I do as well is we partner with as many people as possible.
Yeah. And I was just going to say that too, there is sort of a shift in the way that museums operate now. Museums used to be very cloistered and very much like, these are our collections and we want to protect our collections. But museums are really expanding their educational programs at this point. And to be honest, museums are hurting right now, just like the restaurant industry and the craft beer industry through COVID. They're running the same situations that you guys are in. So they are now starting to look to do programs. As restrictions are lifted, they want to do programs. Museums want to start getting out there and advertising themselves through their communities. They want that public outreach. They're also the sort of old guard of museums are now retiring out, and you're getting a lot younger directors that are coming in. Our friend Sam, who was the director of Albany County Historical, I mean, Sam's in her early 30s. Yep. So it's not like this sort of preconceived notion of the guy in the corduroy jacket with the glasses and the patches on his. That's really not what museums are like anymore. And they really do want to embrace craft beer and craft beverages.
And because all of us, museums as well as craft beverage, we know those people are looking for the authentic experience. Now, again, the data that we just gave you was all pre-COVID, right? Maybe, the idea of getting 20 people close together over a book, maybe we're not there yet. However, what we are finding for the visitors who are coming, now that we're getting vaccinated, now that people are desperate to travel, I think it's US travel, you can find that data, people just are desperate to travel right now, but they're not necessarily getting on planes, they're taking day trips. So they're taking these day trips, but they want to come and get immersed. And what a simple thing is if people know that they can go to, I'm just saying the pump station again, and saying, here I can get a beer that's inspired from a 19th century recipe. How cool is that? Another thing with partnering is also be flexible. The Moby Dick Book Club, which was very successful, had 3 partners. It was Discover Albany. It was Historic Albany Foundation, which is a preservation society in Albany. And it was the Albany Writers Institute. and everybody's bandwidth was a little different, but we all had the same mission. So where one partner was like, oh, I don't know if I can come to every book club. I don't know if I can. It was said, you're a partner because you're going to share with your mailing list. And it was like, oh, okay, I can do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that it's, I've worked with breweries that have put a lot of effort into the events that we do. And I've done work with breweries who have just been like, hey, we're going to show up and put a table. It doesn't necessarily have to be a burden. You don't have to create a beer. You don't have to put that into your schedule of brewing. What's more important is that you're figuring out a way to engage the community that's going to benefit you, and it's going to benefit the museum or the cultural institute, and it's also going to benefit the greater community. That's what, that's the whole point of bringing these three groups together. And the DMOs and Discover Albany and Maeve, they're there to promote you guys. That's exactly what they're there for. And the historians want to tell the story. They want to have conversations about the local, whether it's local breweries or whether it's, just cool local stories about your town. Every town has some cool story that you may have never heard, or your visitors may have never heard. Why not do that over a pint?
Right, and that's the big thing. Why not just do it over a pint? We are going to skip one just for our contact, but we have another question. Have you ever had an individual brewery contact you, or do a group of them collaborate and approach you? That sounds like a you question, Craig.
I have had breweries contact me. I have never had multiple breweries contact me. Usually in the events that I do, it's usually me saying, hey, I've got a good idea. Why don't we go do this? And I bring it to Maeve, and then we go out to our partners. And I think part of that is exactly what we're having this conversation about. I keep looking over there, but I should be looking over here. I think part of that is exactly what we're talking about. I think that breweries and tap rooms and bars and restaurants are interested in doing events, but they're not quite sure what to do. So I am a fairly gregarious person, so I have a tendency to reach out and make my presence known. And there's been times that I've reached out to breweries that they've just been like, nope, we got too much going on. We can't do anything with you. It happens. But I think that the majority of the things that we've come up with, and Maeve and I have said, like, let's do a project. Let's do this. We should figure this out. I think the majority of the people that we've gone to have really embraced it.
And that goes back as well, as again, we're broadcasting from the Copper Crow, which hasn't opened yet. So it's actually around us. It's pretty exciting. But it's also, I know this is, our craft beverage as well, but we've also worked really well with local bar owners who are like, this is a cool space for us to tell a story, which is what our neighborhood brew tours. And I mean, obviously this is going to be a stop on the Warehouse District tour. I don't know if you know that, Craig, but we've decided that. So it's just finding those stories and approaching people, but, also being, sometimes people, especially in COVID, right? I mean, that's the other thing. We are entering a new world. What is our bandwidth right now? We did, I think it was 2 years ago. We did an event for Albany Beer Week with Sam Pagano. Sam is the guy down there in the big floppy hat with a big smile on his face and the flannel. And we just made an 1850s amber ale. He loves amber ales, so we made one. And I got dressed up in that getup that you saw beforehand, and we just bar hopped. He and I just got in a car and went to 5 or 6 places that was selling the beer. And we showed up, and, if you wanted to talk about history, you could talk about history. The majority of the people in the bars just said, who the hell are these two guys? But, it was as easy as that. It was easy as us just going out and talking about history. You didn't even do a whole lot with that, did you? No. That one, we promoted it.
Yeah.
So we knew your schedule, but that was it. They just said, this is a thing we're doing. Yeah. And they let the DMO know. Yep. And, we could tweet it out as we saw you guys around. Yep. Yeah. So let's see. We've got 5 more minutes here.
No, we have 15. No. We have 20 more minutes.
Oh, we have 20 more minutes. What's that?
Yeah, we have
Oh my goodness.
half an hour and 15
half an
minutes
hour.
of questions.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Oh my goodness. How exciting.
So we can start question and answer if you guys have questions or answers for us. We're totally cool. How many people do we have on?
Here we go. I'm not sure. So John is freelance social media manager and marketer. The reason why I ask is if brewers ever contact you, I'm always looking for events to create for clients. What do you do if a brewery's fairly new? They're the best.
Yeah.
So new blood is the best. If there is somebody fairly new, absolutely, for me, I go to them and I introduce myself right away.
Mhm.
And I was like, these are the things I do. This is my friend Craig. And there are definitely times where, because they're just opening, they're like, oh, I don't have the bandwidth for that. And I'm like, that's fine. Here's my card. And then I check in, and then you just, and they start to kind of get it. Cause this is a totally, asking somebody sometimes, like for Craig, who's like, I have a recipe from 1850. Are you going to brew this? And this new brewer's like, I'm just trying to make an IPA, man. Like
we have a local brewery, Fort Orange Brewing Company, which is right up the road. We went to them right after they opened and said, hey, you guys, Fort Orange is a historic name in Albany. Are you guys interested in history? And they said yes. And we said, oh, this is what we do. And they said, we just opened. It's just not going to happen. And we said, no problem. I don't know, maybe a year later, we approached them. The Museum Association of New York had asked Maeve and I to do a presentation about the history of brewing in Albany.
Yeah, it was going to be a trolley tour.
And and they were planning on having their annual conference in Albany, and that got shut down because of COVID. So what we came up with was this virtual tasting, where Fort Orange mailed their beer out to everybody who purchased tickets. I went in and talked about brewing. Craig Johnson, the brewer, sat down and we did basically what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And Craig walked everybody through their beer. He did 4 beers and we talked about Albany Ale. I just did one not too long ago from the director of the Putnam County History Museum, who was at the Manny Conference presentation and said, can you do the same thing with us? And we did it. We did exactly the same thing. I talked about Hudson Valley beer, and we did it with industrial arts. Mm-hmm. And it was nothing. It was an hour's worth of whoever's time to talk about and promote their own beer. And they mailed the beer out, so they got money back on the beer too. So it's that sort of
And that's where I'm gonna like blow this out of the water as well, right? So with Prost, we tried to recreate a historic recipe. With the virtual panel that we did with Fort Orange, there was no way we were making a beer in that time. So it was already extending out their existing product. Mm-hmm. Out it went. And so people were virtually at home drinking the modern beer, but then you still had the historian even adding context to, and really it was the two Craigs. It was, and that
was confusing.
It was confusing. But they were just kind of like riffing on each other,
And with Putnam County, they actually tried to pair the beer, even though it's modern beer, with some of the stuff. I just sent out what I was going to talk about, and they put together like, all right, you're going to talk about IPAs. So let's put the IPA here. We're going to talk about, they had a cream ale that we drank. So we talked about the history of cream ale. So you can do that, it's really great. I think we have a couple more questions here.
Oh, no, they said they liked us.
So
really, you just wanted me to put that positivity.
It's just a comment. That's the kind of comments that I like.
Yes. So, and that's, there is a real flexibility in this, depending on how deep you want to go.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it happen yet, but going back to that question about have multiple breweries contacted you, there are, and I don't know if there's even a talk on this, breweries around here have collaborated together to make beers. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're inspired by, usually it's like a local pride of some kind.
Right.
But they don't always necessarily go for the recipe necessarily. They just, like I said, with Moby Dick Book Club, they might just go for the name.
Yeah.
But this is the idea of just adding that little bit of depth if you can connect with a historical institution to give it more of a story too.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, even if it's like this, we picked this style because.
Yeah, and part of it is too that sometimes in beer marketing and beer promotion, the promotion of the story is a little bit more important than the actual history, when in fact the history can actually be more fascinating than just made up whatever. We heard that this is what this was supposed to be, so we're going to write this on our can, or we're going to write this on our.
So this is a great question. If a brewery is in a suburb, should they contact their own town's historical society or the one from the larger city? And that is a really, really good point.
Yeah.
So, because I've heard some people, I've given this talk before, and people from smaller places are like, well, I can't do that. You're Albany. You're the capital of New York. You have more things to do. I'm like, we're not exactly New York City.
Right.
But no, I would say, start with your local historic society or your library. I would say, maybe you disagree, I would start hyper local, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Library's a good place to start too. Libraries have educational programs. I've done a couple of programs with in fact, we have a program coming up next weekend with our local library branch.
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah. And that's another cool one. That one is just it's basically a scavenger hunt. It's basically the Great Race, but we're going to send people to old brewery locations.
Yep. So that's another program, and you can look that up online. It's the Albany History Race. So it's our local library, and it's a driving scavenger hunt for architecture.
Yeah, I've actually done a number of talks and events at local libraries, and sometimes they're beer pairings and sometimes they aren't. There was one in Chatham, New York with Chatham Brewing Company. They brought some beer in and we did that. I've done Argyle Brewing Company did one in I can't remember. I can't remember the library.
They were recently the last dry town.
Yeah.
In New York State.
Yeah.
But they repealed it just before COVID.
Right. That's
lucky.
no fun.
So I would start, and actually to me, some of these programs, it's almost less pressure to start small because you're building the relationship and you see what works and what didn't. And if you find out you have this really awesome program, then shop it around. And that's two of you. That's this local brewery and this historical society. And then you can go to your bigger museum and say, look at this cool program that we got. Yeah. But the back room in the library, we can only hold 15 people, and then you can grow it from there. And
I again, like I said earlier, I think the biggest hump is just trying to figure out your common ground, right? You're going to a local historian, you're going to a local museum, you're going to a library, and you're saying, all right, we want to do an event with you guys. We think it would be cool to do. This is what we know. How does what you know fit into what we know? And how is what we know going to fit into what you know?
Yeah.
And it's really that simple. I mean, it's not a big hurdle. It doesn't have to be a big burden. It's just reaching out to the right people.
Yeah, and it is just collaboration. At the end of the day, it's just be nice, right? I wouldn't go, if you go to your local museum and be like, I saw these people in Albany and they make historic beers sometimes, so you should do that. They'd be like, what? It's exactly as Craig said. This is what I have. I've got all of these stills and we've got some time. This is an idea. What do you think? And it's coming to them with it's coming to them with an openness of this is what I can offer. Is there anything you could add to enhance that? And letting a conversation happen.
Yeah. It's all figuring out how your knowledge can benefit the greater community and how you can partner with those cultural institutions to do that. That's really what it comes down to it.
Yeah. Just, while we have that little bit of time, I can tell you more about History Race as well, which is something that we're doing with our local library, but how we're reaching out to the breweries, because that's something how does a brewery fit in with a driving scavenger hunt? Right. Well, that's where we're ending our locations. We're stopping and ending at C.H. Evans Brewery. And then other little local pubs and restaurants, they're offering that little coupon for participants and things like that. And the idea is, and this is something that is a philosophy that destination marketing organizations are moving away from, or moving towards, I should say, is to be community events. The philosophy is that, and you hear me use the phrase visitor, right? You don't hear me say tourists, because people don't want to be a tourist, right? They want to be a visitor. So part of like the programming and things that we're doing, it is attractive not only to travelers, but it's for locals as well. And we get a good mix, but really mostly locals.
Yeah, we get, because it's kind of funny if you think about tourism. We have people that are coming in from the suburbs into Albany that don't know necessarily the history of Albany. Mm-hmm. And they may not even know, they may come into Albany from a half an hour outside the city and they go to one or two different places, but there may be bars and restaurants and breweries for that matter that people have never been to, but they're coming to that destination because we're doing this history themed event,
mm-hmm. Right. Which is what the Myers residents in that quote we mentioned earlier is. They were just like, these are people who, may not have come to our site, just to have, just to get a tour. Right. They came to have this experience, to have a drink. And that was the same thing our brewer was like, and these are new people. And for that one, he actually brought a little bit of food, like he had a little sample of food, but that was a way he was also engaging with a new audience. And then it was like, and now you can go down the street to C.H. Evans. Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of it, is that during these tours and stuff, first of all, they're designed to route people to the partners, whether it's a library, whether it's a brewery, like it's not like we're just doing an event using your space. Mm-hmm. The whole point is we're trying to get people to end up after the event or before the event or during the event at your bar, at your restaurant, at mm-hmm. your brewery, like we're trying to bring people in. I went on a ghost tour in New Orleans on my honeymoon, and it was the most brilliant thing ever. You go down there, that you start at a bar, you get a go cup, you're walking around New Orleans, you drink that, you got to go to the bathroom, you have to stop. They won't let you use the bathroom unless you buy a drink. You get another drink, you move on. They stop halfway through the tour at a bar, and you're there for half an hour or 20 minutes or whatever. You get another drink. You've got to pee again, so you've got to stop at another bar. It was brilliant, and that's what there was no doubt after I got over my hangover the next morning. There was no doubt that whoever was running that tour was working with all of those bars that we went past, and it's so easy to do the same thing that, we don't want necessarily to try to get people drunk and make them pay for every time they have to use the bathroom. But the whole point of it is if you're going to create these events, the DMOs are going to try to attach local businesses to it. Mm-hmm. And from the historian's point of view, if they're getting to tell their story, what do they care? Like that's how this is supposed to work, Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, how much time do we have now, Craig?
I think we have 5 minutes left.
So just, are you implying there are a lot of bars in New Orleans?
Yes.
Yes.
We are, John.
Yes, indeed. And in Albany, we've also got a lot as well, which is why we were able to build.
Everybody has a lot of them. That's the thing, so many breweries are popping up. There's always been bars and restaurants, mm-hmm. and there's always been history. There's no, especially if you're talking about beer history, it's all related to itself. So yeah,
we've even done lectures in dive bars.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Because
those are fun.
They're super fun because everybody knows the bar, and I'm going to wrap up with, just as we talk about this as community. Is you see this crew here, and this was the panelists for Prost. We were at Cralo State Historic Site. So we have our beer historian, Craig, the brewer. There is the distiller there, and the woman there is Deanna Fox. She is a food writer. Mm-hmm. So that was another partner that we pulled in.
She was our moderator for that.
Yep, she was our moderator. So again, it just brought another bit of knowledge, but somebody else who could talk it up how cool it was. But a very sweet story about Johnny there, the Albany Distilling Company, during the Tenbrook event. he met his wife.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, he met his
That's
wife.
also a guarantee. If
Right.
all of your DMOs, if you're single and you're looking to mingle, they'll hook you up, right?
That's
Isn't
right. That was
isn't
the
on
deal.
your-
That was the deal. So it just kind of, gives you a sense of the site. People were there to meet and greet, and they've got a baby now. Like it's, so yeah, that's kind of the fun. I just think that's kind of a nice little, cherry on top to some of our programming is that we got a little love. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Craig, if there's any more questions in the chat.
Yeah. If there's anybody, can you see how many people are actually on here? Did we figure that?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions, you've got 3 minutes to do it. Otherwise, we'll probably log off here.
So we hope that my website, we are albany.org. I did not put the Albany Ale Project because,
No, you're the easiest way to find me, to get a hold of me is probably through Facebook. So just do an Albany Ale Project search on Facebook, and you can just message me through there, or I'll give you my email address.
No, it's right there.
Oh, it is. Never mind.
Right there.
My email
Not
address
even
is
reading
right on
slides.
there.
So
Not even reading my own slides.
Yep. So those are the ways that you can contact us. I hope you come to Albany. I hope you take some of our tours, our programs. I
Right.
hope you come to the Copper Crow
Yeah.
when it is going to be clean and lovely, and we're very excited.
You
The
can come see
beautiful
these
murals.
cool
right?
local artists. did these
Local
murals.
artists inspired by New York State, New York State breweries.
Yep.
So yeah, we hope that you come and you experience everything that Albany has to offer, but steal our ideas too. We are totally encouraged. Steal everything
Absolutely.
from us.
Yeah. And I think that's about it. I think we're about good.
That's it. All right.
Alrighty.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.